So the catalyst for this project was a project called the Coming Home project that we did with the National Portrait Gallery. And that project involved the National Portrait Gallery loaning specific portraits to places around the country. So because we're Newstead Abbey and Lord Byron is our most famous resident, we obviously asked for a portrait of Lord Byron. And as part of that, we started doing a project with particular school groups looking at that portrait of Byron. But I didn't want it just to end when that portrait went back. I wanted to take our learning and develop it. I saw that it had this Faces and Places project that linked in perfectly with what I was thinking, which is all about using portraits from their collection, taking them to different schools and helping the young people connect with the portraits and think a bit more broadly about how that connects to them personally. When someone does it before you, you get to see their process and learn from their process. They've already investigated a lot of ideas that we were just starting to think about. So I could ask them quite specific questions about how they'd worked out certain ideas or problems around using perhaps particular portraits with schools. So it's really helpful to pull on that learning and also to be able to see them working with school groups and see that in process, because quite often you come up with an idea, you might talk to a couple of school groups, a couple of teachers, but you never know until you've actually done it what the response is going to be. So to be able to be an observer and be able to be there and take notes and talk to the deliverers and talk to the pupils about the impact it's having and the importance of it has really helped feed into what we're doing here. Most of these portraits would have been here when Thomas Wildman lived here, so he bought the Abbey from Lord Byron in 1818, and the idea is that this room gives a flavour of what the house might have looked like when he lived here. And so historically the people that were represented in portraits was a lot narrower, whereas now we have a lot more images that celebrate different people. The men are wearing things to do with their jobs, so it might be a military uniform, or there's lots of kings sort of holding sceptres and things like that, whereas the ladies tend to be sitting next to pianos and flowers, so a lot more domestic, and all the women are sitting down. After I'd researched the paintings in the salon, I wanted to look at what we had in our broader collection that we could connect to them. So maybe I had a visual connection, or there was a theme or an idea that I felt was similar. So that we're carrying on that dialogue that those portraits start, but we're making sure it represents the people. You know, everyone can come in and see themselves in our collections. So these are two portraits that we selected from our collection. So this is a portrait by an artist called Jo Metson-Scott, and it's really lovely to have this because Jo is from Nottingham and the subjects are also from Nottingham. What I learnt from Faces and Places was all the portraits that were chosen connected to where the children lived, and their faces when they were like, oh, they lived there, they lived here, that was really close to where I am, and that really helped that connection. So that was a really interesting thing to learn. So this is a photograph by an artist called Sharana Shabazi, and what drew me to this one was the connection to some of the male portraits that we have in the salon. A lot of them have very beautiful kind of classical landscapes in the background, which I like sort of being referenced here in this portrait. The stance is quite similar to a lot of the king's paintings that we have in the salon, and a lot of them are holding things, so like orbs or canes and things like that as a sort of a sign of their occupation. So I like that connection with the remote control that he's holding and that sort of reference to his life. The project's been really interesting and really helpful. We're also making connections with other museums in the UK who are also doing really interesting things, and also to be able to have someone that I can phone up and ask questions to at the National Portrait Gallery has been brilliant.